Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is a show where I get to talk about sports, I get to talk about business, and I get to talk about everything in between. Today, my incredible guest, I have Lya Vallat. She's a senior coordinating producer at the NFL Network, formerly with ESPN and the Big Ten Network. Lya, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad that kickoff happened successfully and the season's ready to go. We're underway, finally.
We are
It's
we are
amazing.
underway. I mean, you work for the NFL Network. That's got to be one of the coolest jobs. I
Mhm.
mean, who here doesn't love football? Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going around with football and the political nature of
Mhm.
it. I don't want to get into any of that because I got to watch football yesterday, and I'm going to watch a lot of it this Sunday as well. But Lya, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Well, I think it's because it's been ingrained in me as just a little kid. Grew up playing sports with my brother and his friends, grew up watching sports on television, and then started playing, in high school and didn't play in college, but just, kind of a great way to get away from reality, but also stay fit and just to have a passion for it too. We had season tickets when I was probably like 7 years old. We had season tickets to the Raiders at the Coliseum. And
Whoa.
so my dad would take us every other Sunday, every home game to Raiders games for like 3 or 4 straight years. So that's when I became a fan with the NFL. And then also my love for baseball too, mainly
I
because I
love
played softball growing up.
Okay.
But I also, and we'll probably get into it, what my first
hmm
job, like professional job was, which is pretty exciting, but we'll get to that in a
We
minute, I'm sure.
we will
Um,
we
but
will
all
get to
sports,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, why not, right? It's competition. I just want to see the best people
yeah,
compete in their sport. I don't care what sport it is, if it's
yep,
soccer, if it's baseball, softball. I always watch the NCAA softball tournament every single
nice,
year. Obviously, this year it doesn't look like, we'll see what happens this
yeah,
upcoming year. Last year, unfortunately, didn't happen, but I always love those. There was that Florida Oklahoma game that went like 19 innings or whatever it was a
yep,
couple years ago. Watched every
yep.
single second of it. It was incredible. But you bring up the Raiders, so I'm kind of curious. So where were the Raiders? Was this LA? Was this Oakland? Where were you when you were going to
hmm
these games?
Los Angeles. So I grew up in Bakersfield, California, so it's 2 hours
Okay.
north of LA. So yeah, they were in LA at the time. So they
That's
played at the
awesome.
Coliseum.
And so
Yeah.
which teams were these? Were these the
The
Oakland? I mean,
Flores.
okay.
Oh no, they're Los Angeles Raiders. Yeah.
No,
So
no, no. I
it
mean,
was
like, which
oh
years was I
Marcus
can't ask you how old
Allen.
you are. Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you, thank you. Sorry, sorry,
Marcus
sorry.
Allen, the Flores, Coach Days, Plunkett, like yeah, those
So the
days.
heyday, pretty much. Like you
Yeah,
you you got the best. So that's an easy way to start loving a sport, right? Especially when the team that you root for is pretty
yes,
damn good. I remember pretty much the first
yes.
Giants team I started rooting for. I mean, it was like, hey, the New York Giants, they play in New Jersey, so I'm going to root for them. But the first year I really, really started to care was my parents dropped me off at my grandmother's house, and the Giants beat the undefeated Broncos. I think the Broncos were 13-0 at the time, on
Mhm.
their way to one of the Super Bowls, if I'm not mistaken. So that's when I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then obviously 2000, they got throttled in the Super Bowl, but they made it to the Super Bowl, which I thought was pretty cool. So it's young kids, man.
Yeah.
We just love rooting for the favorites. It's kind of funny.
Well, and you brought up the Broncos, and they're actually my favorite team now.
No way.
So John Elway changed the
Uh,
game for me, big time. I mean, a guy that can play. They got drafted by the Yankees, so he could have played Major League Baseball, or he
mhm.
could have played football. From Stanford. So he chose football, and just obviously dominated. Finally got his world championship rings that he deserved, well deserved. But yeah, he's one of the main reasons why I became a Broncos fan. But a lot of people are like, you went from Raiders to Broncos. Like, how dare you? How could
Yeah.
you? But with Elway, I don't know, kind of made it easy. I felt like I was kind of forced to like the Raiders because my
Okay.
dad had season tickets. So finally, when I got to pick, like, oh, okay, what team do you want? Do you want? My brother's like, you have to pick a team. I'm like, okay, I kind of like John Elway. Why don't we go with the Broncos? So
I like that. So
anyway,
my parents did the exact same thing. My mom's a huge Dolphins fan because of Dan Marino. My dad's a big Chargers fan because of Dan Fouts.
mm-hmm.
So pretty much the exact same
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I was forced to like the Mets. So joke's on me, I guess, there, because I'm still a pretty big Mets
Huh.
fan. Yeah.
So you're a Giants fan and a Mets fan.
Hmm.
You know, so Linda Cohn, who
Hmm.
a legend at ESPN, she's got the same allegiances, and she's from, I believe, New Jersey, but she likes the Giants, and the Mets are her favorite baseball team. But isn't usually like the Giants and the Yankees or the Jets?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I got lucky. I
Interesting.
got lucky, thankfully, I didn't pick the Jets because I have friends that are Giants and Mets or Jets and Mets fans, and Islanders
Okay.
fans too, so it's just, like, just continuously being pummeled by just,
Yes.
stupid franchises doing stupid things, so I at least got a little
Yes.
happiness with the Giants and Eli a couple times, which
Yeah.
was pretty great, but the Mets, man, they're my favorite thing on planet Earth, and all they ever do is love to let me down, so we're here to talk about football, we're here to talk about you, we don't need to talk too much more
Yes.
about the Mets,
Okay.
and so I do want to talk about, so as you said, your love of baseball growing up not too far
Mm-hmm.
outside of California, out of Los Angeles. Your first job, as you said, your first professional job, and I'm going to use a little bit of air quotes there. You can tell me how wrong I am, but you were a ball girl for the Padres. How the heck do
Yes.
you land one of those positions? Because I feel like they probably have thousands and thousands of kids apply every single year.
Yeah, and the key word you just said there was kids, right? So when I tell people, oh yeah, I was a ball girl for the Padres, they were like, oh, what were you, like 15? And I was like, no, I was like 20
Oh, no
in
way.
college. Oh yeah, see?
You got me.
So
That's pretty good.
I was at San Diego State, and I was playing on a co-ed softball team with guys that worked in the Padres ticket office. And a couple of the women were leaving to go to different colleges. And so, and I mean, they were like younger, but I was like, oh, and they're like, you're kind of in college and stuff. Normally we'd ask like high school, but would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. So I literally had to go to Jack Murphy Stadium at the time, before it was Qualcomm, and take grounders and literally like try out, and ended up making the squad. We had 4 of us ball girls, and we would rotate every other game. And it was amazing. It was like 1997 through about 2000. So I ended up actually in 98 working a World Series game, which was amazing.
Whoa.
We got
That's
swept against
cool.
the Yankees, but
Who cares? Whatever. You're still
just to
there.
be able to, in front of 75,000 fans, and run out with all the players and have your name announced and all that stuff, that was pretty cool. But it was fun. I mean, we got paid like $60 a game. We got free sunflower seeds, bubble gum, and we got 4 tickets per homestand. So
Oh,
I
wow.
know, it was amazing. It was amazing. And we didn't have to wear like the full uniform either. We could wear like shorts or, athletic pants or whatever. We didn't have to, and we didn't have to wear a helmet at the time. Like that wasn't a rule. So it was pretty awesome. Definitely.
That sounds
One of
just
the
very.
highlights after 25 years in this business, still probably the highlight of,
I mean,
of my
working a World
sporting
Series
career.
game. Working a World Series game just sounds absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic. That must have been so cool. I've been
Yeah.
to one World Series game, the one the Mets won actually, which I'm very grateful for, and just the energy
Nice.
in the stadium. Did you grow up a Padres fan? I mean, you were from LA, so I have to assume Dodgers, but
I
did
grew
you
up a
care
Dodgers
about the
fan.
Padres?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it didn't really matter to
I
you. It
think
was probably fun to work for him, but still, I mean, being
yeah,
there and just feeling that energy must have been insane.
yeah, it was. It was awesome.
That is
No
so cool.
regrets there. I
I
mean, to
hope
be able
not.
to
And
literally sit on the bench like before every game, and we'd go out and warm up in the outfield, shag some balls for batting practice, and then we would literally sit on the bench until the starting pitcher took the mound, and then we'd run to our positions. So I'd be sitting, next to Tony Wynn talking about hitting, or Kevin Brown talking about pitching, or Steve Finley, like, taking certain angles on the ball in center field, and how, certain, pitch, like signs that he watches to make adjustment. Like it was literally situations like that you kind of take for granted. But now, like looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I was probably like one of the luckiest humans who actually love baseball to be in that position. So it was awesome.
That is incredible. I will say I don't believe in luck. You worked hard and you got there. I'll say that. But getting to hang out with Tony Gwynn is pretty darn cool.
I
Just asking
mean,
him about hitting. I mean, obviously, rest in peace, Tony Gwynn. Very, very
yes.
disappointing.
Ugh,
But at the
I
same
know.
time, so cool that you got that opportunity. And Kevin Brown, everyone always
Yeah.
forgets about how good Kevin Brown was. So it's kind of disappointing for that guy. But no, that must have just been
Yes.
so much fun. And so you started this when you were 20, you said, right? So at what point
Mhm.
before this or after this or during this did you decide that it would be kind of cool to stand up in front of a camera and start talking sports in some capacity to people? Like where along the timeline did that happen?
Yeah, well, that was short lived. I thought that I wanted to be in front of the camera. You know, I would see all the time local reporters out there doing hits and live shots and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, is this something that I could possibly do? Would I want to do something like this? And then I actually tried it a couple of times and I was awful. And so I just, people are like, where's Lya? Like, where is she? Like, the camera turns on and you freeze up. And I'm like, well, that's I do not know. Like, maybe I shouldn't worry, like, think about being in front of the camera and just learn the behind the scenes stuff. And so
Mhm.
once I learned a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff, it was an easy transition. And I was very fortunate to get my first job right out of college with the company, the network that actually produced all the Padres games, Channel 4 San Diego. Um, Before Anchorman, there was a Channel 4
Yes.
San Diego, owned by Cox Communications. But they did, 162 Padres games and hired me. I made, networked and made relationships with a bunch of the people that worked there. So I was super lucky. That was my first job in the industry right out of college, which was awesome.
That is an awesome, awesome job to have too, considering you were already kind of working with the Padres for the Padres in some capacity.
Yep.
You know exactly where you're going, you know exactly how to do it. So I guess, unfortunate that your time in front of the camera was short lived. I will say, if you do it a couple times, you get a lot better at it. It sounds like it was just something that wasn't quite for you. I love it. I love looking at myself in the camera. So I guess it kind of worked out with me. But no, I mean, I
Well,
think,
you have a great voice too. My voice
thank
is
you.
like high and nerdy, whatever. Your voice is like on point and conversational and all that good stuff. So
Well,
you
it
made the
it's
right
only
choice.
taken me, about 2 years and about 400 of these to get kinda good at it. So don't worry, I still got a while to go, but I appreciate that, the kind words, of course, and so,
Yes.
it is really interesting though, like saying, "Hey, I wanna be in front of the camera," and then just kind of like saying, "Oh, no, actually, I wanna be behind the camera." Was there ever any interest in behind the camera work before? Like, is that something you wanted to go to college for, or were you just interested in the dynamic of television and kind of how that works? Because that's just because you wanna be in front of it, I don't wanna be behind the camera at all, to be totally honest with you. So, kinda curious where that
Yeah.
love of, that interest comes from.
Well, I was a speech communications major and I knew that I wanted to do something in sports. And initially, I wanted to work for a team, like in their communications department, PR department, marketing department. But then once I was like on the field and started meeting people on the TV side, I'm like, wow, I can actually make a career out of this as well, like in the TV world. So, and I got to see like a lot of like producers, the creativity of their jobs. And so that was an interest. Plus, at the end of the day, and whatever we do, you have to be passionate about it, right? I know it sounds corny, but it is 100% why we're doing what we're doing today, and why I've been in this industry for 20 plus years. That we're lucky enough to be extremely passionate about what we do every day. So it was kind of an easy transition. And then just internships, more so than any classes that I took at San Diego State. It was the internships of working at the local TV stations. I worked in radio for a little bit too, to kind of find out the behind the scenes stuff and how it works. So that was extremely valuable in getting into the industry.
That is awesome. And yeah, it worked. It worked
Yeah.
very well because, as you said, you've been here for 20 plus years doing your thing, now working at the
Yeah.
NFL Network again. We have Lya Vallat, Senior Coordinating Producer at the NFL Network. We were talking when we were off air. Lya was sending some emails. Did anybody answer those emails yet? Because if not, we might
Yes,
have to.
we
They
got
did?
it.
Okay. All right. I was gonna say we might have to
Yep.
make some heads roll.
Mhm.
I've never done that live, but hey, I'm willing to do whatever you need me to do, Leah. I promise you that. So
We
with
got it.
good. we'll get to that a little bit later. So I was just kind of curious again,
Okay.
maybe make some heads roll. So you're behind the camera. You start loving that aspect of the job, as you said. You're very passionate about it. The one thing you said before is, you worked at Channel 4, San Diego.
Mhm.
You I don't remember, what is the line from Anchorman? Whatever, I can't even remember what it is anymore, but,
Stay
I should
classy, San
rewind.
Diego.
Hey, thank you very much. I hope,
Mhm.
well, I guess it was before the movie, never mind. We'll get off that topic. But you said 162 games they produced, and you had 162 games. That's a
Yeah.
lot of games. Because my favorite part about baseball is the grind. This season's kind of weird. It's kind of stupid because we're
Mhm.
making inferences on 30 games and saying, well, the season's halfway over. It's like, well, the Yankees, I'm confident if it was 162, they'd end up with 90 wins, they'd end up above 500, and we'd have nothing to worry about. But we're seeing in a very small sample size, these guys that hit 235 for 30 games. It's not that big a deal over 162, but it's a huge deal over 60. How did you get involved 162 games in 180, 185 days, whatever it is?
Yes.
Was that a boon in the beginning, especially coming right out of college, kind of, not too much responsibility, hanging out, having a good time, and now it's bam, this is your first real job. Get
Yes.
ready because you're going to be worked to the bone. How did that weeds out a lot of people in the sports
Does.
industry, especially the live aspect of it and working game
Mhm.
days and things like that. How did you kind of deal with that right off the bat and, understanding that, weekends, see you later, weddings and funerals, sorry guys, can't make this one. How did you deal with that aspect of it?
Well, it's very interesting, and I go back to the passion of it, and I'm like, God, what else could I do? Do I want like an office job, or do I want to love what I do? So it was kind of a decision early on that you're right. I had to give my nights up. I had to give holidays up, weekends, all that stuff, but I just knew it, and it never was really an issue. Like my family members didn't really get it. Even being like major sports fans, they still were like, "But you get Christmas off, right?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe." I might have to work a bowl game because we also did a Aztec Sports Weekly show.
Mhm.
So if they were in bowl games, I'd have to work Christmas. But anyway, so all major holiday, and then at night again. So if anything, I saved money because I had zero life. So it was, that part was good. But I just think like I never really thought about the social aspect of giving things up. It was more of, gosh, how lucky am I to do something that I truly love every day, and to get to be around, you know, people that you idolize, and I mean some of the best in the game that you cover, to be able to interview, tell stories, and all that stuff. So I did. I have to give a shout out to Jane Mitchell, who was one of my mentors at Channel 4 San Diego. She did this great series called One on One with Jane Mitchell, and they were hour programs with, and she would go really in depth, like from childhood photos, and interview high school coaches and kindergarten teachers and all that stuff. So one of my first one-on-ones was with Ted Williams, and got to meet Ted
Whoa.
Williams, and sit down with Ted Williams and talk to Ted Williams, not only about baseball, but about fishing, because he was very passionate about fishing, and just the stories that he had. I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. But when that was like one of my first assignments, and to see that from the beginning, to be in the process of all the interviews, gathering all the information and pictures and stuff. I was a production assistant at the time. And then seeing that come to fruition, and it winning, local Emmy awards and all that stuff was pretty cool. So that no pun intended with the fishing talk, but that hooked me into this industry. And then, yeah,
It's a history from
pretty
there,
good
I
first
think,
guess.
yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty incredible one. I
Yeah.
will say my first guess was
Yeah.
not Ted Williams, unfortunately, but we're getting a little bit closer every day, and now that I know you, now that maybe, you can connect me with, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes, that'll be a cool one, but until then, we have some time, we have
I'll
some time.
try.
So with, with starting at a local station, a lot of the ways that I have heard, at least in the industry, with people on the camera, in front of the camera, working the camera, is you have to move around a lot. You have to go to a lot of different places, and you
Yeah.
have to kind of, that's the way you can really get to higher heights in the industry. How did you
Mm-hmm.
go about that? Because I know, as I said before, worked for ESPN, the Big Ten Network, obviously now working for the NFL Network, but How did you get
Yeah.
to ESPN? How many stops in between Channel 4 San Diego and ESPN were there where you had to move to, I think I was just speaking to another gentleman, Billings, Montana, or, Topeka, Kansas,
Yeah.
before you could finally make it over to Bristol and work at the mothership?
Yeah. Well, call it luck, good timing. I don't know. Maybe I was
Nope.
okay at my job at the time. But
Don't believe in luck,
so I was
Lya.
at
We already
Channel
talked
4.
about that.
Don't believe in luck. I was at Channel 4 for 6 years. Again, that was my first job out of college. So I started as a production assistant, then got promoted to associate producer, then producer. So I was producing magazine shows. I was producing pregame shows out of the truck for the Padres and postgame shows. And ESPN posted a position for a studio producer. And I went to Bristol and I interviewed for it and ended up, not telling anyone at work or anything. But quite frankly, I had kind of hit my ceiling. I knew that I hit
Mhm.
my ceiling, and I knew that I wanted to, go on to a national network. And so I interviewed for a studio producer position, not really knowing totally what that entailed. But the interview process was very, like, I had 8 interviews in a day, and it was crazy, but ended up getting the job at ESPN. So I was very, like, this is my first job. Like I felt like I was
Mhm.
going to disappoint my boss by telling him I was leaving. And you work for amazing people. And Dennis Morgino was the executive producer. And I went into his office and I said, I can't. I just love obviously working here. I've grown so much. But I do have to tell you that I accepted a position at ESPN in Bristol, and producing studio shows. And I was expecting him to be like, oh man, like what, like, okay, like why? He stood up and get over here, and he gave me a big hug, and he's like, I'm so proud of you. So get a little emotional thinking about it, because it really was a family environment there. And I mean, that place I learned so much, and I was surrounded by a lot of talented people. And so that's why I say that I was lucky. I mean, you create your own opportunity, but I also was very lucky to work with such quality people, talented people that literally were your cheerleaders along the way. So everyone was just, when I thought people were going to be like so sad and like, oh gosh, people were just like, this is amazing. You're making it to the big time, or whatever, Then it finally hit me like, okay, I made the right decision.
Mhm.
This is kind of the second step in my career, but obviously the right step. And to go from San Diego to Bristol, Connecticut, like you have to really love what you do.
Yep.
So it was a great opportunity, and from there kind of propelled the rest of my career. So
And
important step.
what is that like going from that local station? Now, again, San Diego, it's not like it's a small city. It's not like people
Yeah.
don't know what this city is. You're starting at something, but what is it like, I guess, mentally going from knowing that, hey, I'm getting in front of, Padres fans and Aztecs fans today. This is going to be fun, to now you're doing national broadcasts and now it's
Yeah.
millions and millions of people paying attention. Like,
Yeah.
how was that something that got your
Yeah.
juices flowing, or is that something that I mean, obviously you didn't shy away from it because you continue to do it, but like, what was it like at least at first?
Yeah. It was I don't want to say intimidating. I was excited the whole time. Like there was no intimidation factor, because I've never really thought about how many people are like watching your product. Because if
Hmm.
you do, you kind of get caught up and stressed and worried about that. I just try to concentrate on doing my best and putting the best product out there and thinking what the viewer wants to see. Um, Versus like how many people are actually watching. So it really hit me when I started off doing ESPN News for a couple months, and then got promoted to actually produce the 1 a.m. Sports Center, which at the time was the show of record. There was no West Coast operations yet. So that was the show. So we were on at 1 a.m. and I would get home at like 3 or 4 a.m. But anyway, that was kind of like a wow. And you're covering every single sport. You're dealing with breaking news. You're dealing with a ton more sponsorships, and you're dealing with, and again, I love them all, but you're dealing with more egos than you're really used to dealing with talent. Again, love them all, still very good friends of mine. But, it takes a certain person to be able to do that every night. Something that I couldn't do. And to work with kind of the best people in the biz was pretty humbling, but also rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, because that means you're one of the best people in the biz, right? Like they don't just hire anybody there. I mean, it's
Well,
pretty
no,
impressive.
it's true. It's true. I got to tell you, I learned a lot. I was kind of, in a good way, thrown into the fire. Um, and, at a certain point, I was true with myself, and I think the company was true with me. And they basically said, listen, 1 a.m. Sports Center is great, but we need to get you more into the live stuff, because a lot of the
Mhm.
stuff we would have would be taped or the highlights would be over. We need to get you in the live environment of reacting versus like already knowing what's in the can,
Mhm.
and so then they put me on Baseball Tonight, NFL Live, and then wanted to really get into more live events. So I ended up doing raps for live events, which is the closest studio thing you could do in the live event world. When I was at ESPN, there were pretty much two different worlds. You were either in studio or you were in live events, and there was no crossover. They have since fixed that, and there is a lot of crossover, but the only way at that time to get into live events was to do raps, which was a little bit below my skill level, but I wanted to be in that environment and put myself in the position to possibly go into live events. So,
What
which
what is
helped
a rep?
me later.
What is a rep?
So
Like post game?
it's yeah, so halftime and post game,
Okay.
like a pregame. Like if there's a basketball game and it's a 05 tip, we'll come to the studio for 2 minutes and then you send it out to site. Then they come to you for halftime, and then they come to you to either bridge in between games or do like a post game show. Wrap, yeah,
Rap. Yes.
wrap it
Okay,
up.
cool. Just wanna make sure all on the same page, all on the same page.
Yes,
That's
yes,
pretty cool. And so, like, why did they so as you said before, it was kinda broken up into, like, the Sharks and the Jets, it sounds like almost a little bit. And so
yeah.
why did they want you to make that? Was it a you thing? Was it like the culture was changing that they wanted everybody to start kinda crossing over? Like, what was it about that time period that they really wanted to start to integrate you into the more live events?
Yeah, I think it was more of what I wanted to do versus what they wanted me to do. There wasn't anyone that was doing both,
Mhm.
um,
Trendsetter. Okay,
and
cool. Yeah,
that
alright.
actually, well, a little bit. I mean, I wasn't doing the live events like producing yet. I was doing the studio stuff still, so I wasn't totally in it. Um, and then I ended up leaving to come back home to deal with a family matter, and working at Fox Sports. And that's where I got really into the pre and post, you know, for Lakers, Dodgers, I mean, all the LA teams out of production trucks and getting the feel of that and stuff. So it kind of propelled me into that, to that next position in a weird way.
Mhm.
But at the time, there had just not really been, like, you're either a studio producer or you're a live events producer, and the two worlds never really clashed back in the day. Now it's a
Okay.
totally different story. Like, if you can't produce a live game and a studio show, then you're not going to have a job pretty much
Mhm.
anymore. You have to be extremely flexible, especially what we're doing now in the remote environment because of COVID and stuff. So
Yes, and I'm
um,
excited to talk about
anyway,
that. I do wanna stick on this topic for a little bit longer, though. Like, what is
yeah,
like, why was it back in the day you couldn't or you really I don't wanna say allowed, but, like, why were people kind of stuck in either live or studio? Like, what is the difference with those 2 things? As you say, you need to be flexible nowadays to
yeah,
make sure you can get a job. What are the really big differences that maybe someone like myself, not really
yeah.
understanding what's going on, but kinda can seeing it on the TV, like, what will be some of those differences?
So I'll just take you through like quick preparation of both type of
Yep.
shows. So like for a studio show, you have a rundown and you stack the rundown with all of your stories. You talk to your analysts. You get the tapes that they want to talk about. So everything's pretty much structured. Live event, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you can have the only thing that's scripted is basically you're open to the show and any sponsorships that you have to get in.
Mhm.
Everything else, you're just reacting, reacting, reacting. Where more in a studio environment, you're planning and you're building off that. The only time that those two worlds kind of collide is in a breaking news situation.
Mhm.
So if you're in a studio show, you have breaking news, then you have to think on your feet, like, okay, what guest am I going to get on? What should the graphics say? You know, how are we going to move this conversation forward in the moment? Where when you're producing a live game, you're always in the moment. You have to be. And you have to be forward thinking in that moment too. Like if someone, scores like 12, 12 points in basketball, you're looking at your EVS tape guy and you're saying, okay, build a package on that player. Graphics, how many times has this player scored the first 12 points, in a game
Mhm.
before, whatever like that. So you're in the moment and you're documenting the moment, but you're also looking ahead on how to tell storylines. Where in a studio environment, it's more just kind of all like in front of you. Sometimes what I want to do to some of our studio producers is in the middle of a show, just turn off the rundown in ENPS and say, go,
Go.
go, figure it out. But
Oh,
that
I
would be
love
kind
it.
of mean. So
I
don't
don't
want to
know.
do that.
You gotta work with it, right? I mean, that honestly,
Right.
the live sounds like so much more fun. That just sounds like it's just so much more.
Yeah.
Obviously, a little more risk, more reward, right? I think that part is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. But that just sounds like so much fun, just kind of on your feet, thinking consistently,
Mm-hmm.
constantly, and really just trying to understand, as you said, like really trying to tie everything together. That storytelling aspect in real time while documenting
Yes.
it is pretty darn cool. So you went from studio to more of this live
Yes.
aspect. As you said, you then went back from ESPN, you moved back to California, as you said, for a family
Mm-hmm.
matter, and that's where you started working
Yep.
with Fox. Is that
Yep.
your time at the Big Ten? Is that when,
No.
or was
So
there a
that was
step in between?
there was step in between. And so went to FSN West Prime Ticket, and did some remote stuff, and then made a quick little move to Masson, Mid Atlantic Sports Network in Baltimore,
Okay.
and was in charge of
Okay.
all the pre and post game shows there. Which, let me tell
Man.
you, to do a pre and post game show for Orioles and Nationals when they weren't very good, that was very
Yeah.
challenging. But this is the great part. So you never burn bridges, right? So when I was at Masson, ESPNU called out of Charlotte, and they said, we are looking for a hybrid producer. We know that you have done both, that you tried to do both in Bristol. We are looking for mainly a studio producer, like 80%, and 20% live events. Would you be interested? And I was like, yes. Okay, so awesome that you're developing this position. And yeah, so went to Charlotte, North Carolina, worked at ESPNU, started out doing a lot of studio shows and a little bit remote. And then when I left there for Big Ten Network, I was doing probably 90% remote live events and probably 10% studio. Um, so
Is it harder to do the live events when you are remote? Right? Like, because I've been in those trucks before, like when they're on site. Is there any difference? I mean, it's a dark truck and just kind of a bunch of people just in there doing
yeah,
what they need to do. But is there any difference doing it remote versus actually being on site?
there's not. I mean, the biggest thing is that if your challenges are like normally we would go to shoot around or meet with the coaches or whatever, you're having to do that on the phone,
Mhm.
and you're not able to see practice and stuff like that. If your analysts or talent are at the game versus the face to face when you're both at a game in a production truck. So that's probably the biggest difference. I think it's easier for the production side of things. I think it's definitely harder
Mhm.
for play-by-play and analysts to be in a room, 2,000 miles away from where the event is being played. So
Mhm.
I know that that's what a lot of networks are doing right now and have been doing. That's something that Big Ten Network started, and then other networks have followed suit. But it's cost effective. Those production trucks are expensive.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, if you're doing just like a ho hum, not to pick on the Big 12, but
I was gonna say, who are we gonna
if it's like,
is it like Iowa
it,
State? Like, what are we doing today?
yeah, something like that. I mean, that was my pretty much for like 3 years when I was at ESPNU. That
Uh-huh.
was my gig. Wednesday night Big 12 men's basketball package. So I've been to Ames, Iowa. I've been to the Little Apple in Manhattan.
Mhm.
Um, I've been to Stillwater. I've been to all the places. I've been to Lubbock. So anyway, so it's like, does that make the most sense for just a random Wednesday, unless, they're ranked in the top 25, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
college basketball shouldn't have rankings until like the last 2 weeks of the season. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Duke should
I'm gonna
just
let
be
you do
number
it.
1. Everyone else
Yes,
can be below them, and we're good to go.
yes, exactly. Um, so anyway, does that make more sense than literally reducing it by half or more than half to, I'm a big, like, firm believer, if you can have talent on site, that's amazing. And technically you can figure it out. And if it's cost effective, great, because I think it does make a difference. But the production crew and staff, they could do everything that they would have done on site in a nice confined control room. And oh, by the way, it helps on costs of travel and hotel rooms and all that stuff too. So there's a bigger picture on why pretty much every single network has this set up now.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Again, it's one thing if it's, Kansas State on that Wednesday night where Kansas is ranked in the top 5 and
Yes.
Kansas State's, kind of knocking on the door of the top 25. But yeah, sorry, if it's Iowa State, Kansas State, I don't think too many
Yeah.
people are going to be angry if the producers don't have just the most perfect information. So still going to watch the game,
Yeah.
whatever. But like, it definitely makes sense again if you can save, because, you think how many people are in a production truck? Like 12, 15
About, yeah,
times
15.
times
Yeah.
a round trip ticket. Like, that's a lot of
Yeah. I mean,
money, right? Like, that
a
alone.
lot of them, besides like the producer, the AD sometimes is local, the director, but all the technical positions usually, the graphics producer, not, but like tape, electric, audio,
Thank you.
technical director, the person pushing the buttons to get the pictures on TV. Those people are usually local hires.
Okay.
The big productions, they'll travel people, but yeah, and you never know. I mean, I was lucky enough, I believe it was 2011 when TCU played Kansas. Kansas is number 4 in the country, and TCU upset Kansas, and that was, I mean, we were just like, wait, what? Like, the score at halftime was like 21-19. And we were like, wait, what? Could this happen? But anyway, that was like, if we had a production truck for it, so it was
That
all
is
good.
awesome. That is so awesome. So grateful that you get to go to those types of things. So you
Yeah.
spent some time at ESPNU, then hopped over to the Big Ten, and then after the Big Ten, that is where you landed with the NFL Network, correct?
Yes, you are
Which
correct.
is
You're caught
great.
up.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I had all my timelines correct. So we're at the
Yes.
NFL Network. You are currently you are the senior producer, senior coordinating producer for NFL Total Access, which is the show pretty much anyone that watches the NFL Network, unless it's Good Morning Football, which I love. It's NFL Total
Great show.
Access.
Great show.
So it's one of those
Yep.
two shows most people watching. How cool is it? I mean, a flagship show, whatever we want to say, like it. I'm not gonna say you made it, because I'm sure there's many more goals and there's other things that you want to do. But like, how cool is it to know that you're kind of on like one of the bigger shows in the biggest sport here in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, and I do have to say, I do take it for granted a lot of the time. But NFL is king, right? And to be able to lead one of the shows that we do in an everyday production. I mean, we're just like Good Morning Football. We are one of the only daily shows. We have an awesome news show that's from 10 to 12 our time called NFL Now, which is phenomenal. As well, it's kind of a daily show. So between those three, I kind of like to say, we're the first word that you're going to hear in football with Good Morning Football, and we're also the last, because we have the luxury of having Total Access on at 7:00 Eastern. So technically, we are the last official daily show that's giving you all of your football news. So to be able to work at a place, at a network that you're able to say, okay, you're going to hear the first word in football for the day, and you're also going to hear the last and be a part of that, is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, and yeah, it is absolutely king here in the United States, we know. I mean, it was
Yeah.
awesome. Basketball playoffs are still going on. I'm gonna watch every game. I think there's a game 7 tonight as of
Yep.
recording with the Raptors and Celtics. Let's go Raptors there, but, yeah, football, we've all kinda just been since all these sports came back, we've all just been like, "Awesome, sports are back. That means we'll get football soon
Yep.
too," and we've kinda just been waiting, and here we are. Last night, we had the first game of the season, Patrick Mahomes,
Yes.
Deshaun Watson. It was a cool
Wow.
it was supposed to be a fun game. It was kind of a blowout for most of it. The score was not indicative of what the actual the game was. I think the Texans scored 2 touchdowns real late, which kinda
Yeah.
just made it respectable, but it is what
I
it
think
is.
I think the Texans could have used some preseason games. I think the
Yes.
Chiefs obviously didn't need any
Yeah.
preseason games.
Very
I mean,
yeah.
the rich get richer. I mean, getting Clyde Allaire as their running back. I mean, when they drafted him at 32, I was like, oh, okay, is this
Uh-oh.
lethal? Are we allowing this to happen? Like, what are we doing, everybody? So to be able to get that, I mean, they got better, right? So they're obviously the favorites in the AFC. Although I am taking the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl. I just think it's their time. I think it's all going to click. I think they have a better defense than
Yes.
the Chiefs, and offensively they're pretty similar. So anyway, not to get too in the weeds, but the Texans,
Hey, I'll talk football.
they definitely,
You work for
yeah.
the NFL Network. I will talk football with you all day, Leah. Do not
Okay,
worry. Get
okay,
as far
okay.
into the weeds as you want. Don't worry. I
I won't
love
get
it.
that far in the weeds, but
Okay,
the
I understand.
Texans too. I mean, do you like the whole David Johnson trade? They were talking about like how could they do that and trade D Hop, and I mean, it looked pretty good. He got fantasy owners 20 points. He didn't look too shabby there. So,
Mhm.
but again, they're I thought going in was going to be sloppy, but the Chiefs started pretty slow, but then the Chiefs picked it up, and
Mhm.
as long as Andy Reid can see out of his shield, I
That
think
was
we're
awesome.
good. Oh my gosh,
That was
bless
absolutely fantastic. That made me
bless his
laugh.
heart,
Oh,
bless his heart.
Andy Reid. Gotta love him. And so with
Mm,
that, I mean, obviously, as we can tell, we've just been waiting for football this entire time. Just waiting, just waiting, just waiting. We
yeah.
had 4 months without sports. You having, again, working on the flagship, as you said, you're the last word of football. This is the last daily show of
Hmm.
football every single day. What the heck were you doing for like 4 months? Because that first month, it was like, okay, we still have the draft. So it's fine. It's not a big deal. We'll do the combine.
Yeah.
I watched all the combine. I thought it was awesome putting it at night. I don't think it worked as well for the players, unfortunately, but I
Yep.
think it's going to continue to be at night because the ratings were so darn high. So
Hmm.
6 one might have to have the other. Then we had the draft, which was awesome. Then we could talk about the draft for
Hmm.
like a month. And it's still technically the off season. So it really wasn't that big a deal, but there was nothing else going on. So did it
Hmm.
feel like a weird because it was still the off season, right? Like it's really not you weren't gonna have football on that entire time, but did it feel weirder? Was there like a different kind of vibe or energy around it? Like, I mean, obviously everything with the sickness and everything going on, but how did you
Hmm.
feel about it just in terms of just daily content moving forward?
Yeah. Well, it really taught our network, as well as many other networks, how to run efficiently and more efficiently. And if anything, I always take a bad situation, try to turn it into a good situation and learn from it. And I think that's exactly what we've done. We started off thinking about, my last time, and a lot of our last times in the building was right after free agency. So second week of March. And I just went back last week for the first time to do a rehearsal. And so to be that far removed, but really not from your daily grind that you do, it's pretty remarkable. A credit goes to so many people that this would be a 2 hour more podcast if I had to thank everybody. But it really, not to sound cheesy, but it really has been a team effort. As far as just like, okay, we still want to do a daily show. How can we do this in our remote environment? So we started off like literally pre-taping a 30-minute total access in the morning at 9:30 because we literally had an editor putting it together. It was all live to tape
Oh,
stuff.
whoa.
And so that took time. So, the latest that we could have been done with the show was like at noon because literally they had to piece everything together and feed it to our master control so it could make air. And if we had any breaking news or anything like that, we had a news crew able to, jump in live and update the show. So that's how we operated for almost a month. And then we knew that draft was coming up, and we knew that we had to have a live presence of our pre and post game shows around the draft. So we ended up hiring a company out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, that basically did a remote production for us. So the remote hub, control room, everything that we would have in Culver City was in Oklahoma instead. Because, with the LA ordinance, we couldn't have anyone in our building. So we did that for a little bit, and that was great to give us just the live. And then we started using that company for getting back to TA live. And then we started being able to allow essential workers to come into the building and work from the control rooms again and get into a groove of doing live TV, but literally 4 people in the control room when you have like 15. And then everyone else has been at home on remote. So, it's developing, like, how do you communicate? So it's, like buying new software. The software that we use is called Unity, and it literally is an intercom system that you would have in a control room that you can communicate to talent. So all talent, analysts, hosts have home cams. So they have these home cams and ring lights, and it's all routed to Culver City, where our studios are. And so that's how we're able to communicate and get people on air and everything. But we're getting back to being, allowing more people in the building. We're doing, testing for employees, which has been awesome. The safety measures that everyone from facilities has had to implement has been pretty amazing. So again, not to get too cheesy about everything, but like it really has been a tremendous team,
effort.
team
effort.
situation effort. And with the leagues too. I mean, to actually have kickoff and have games this Sunday is remarkable, considering where we were a month ago, 2 months ago. I mean, 3 months ago, we were thinking that there wasn't even going to be a season. So it is pretty amazing what we've been able to accomplish. So
it is really interesting, and yeah, kudos and congratulations to everybody for being able to pull that off, because I'm sure, again, it's not like we had time to figure it out and it's like, all right, this is the process, this is the structure we're going to go through. It's, hey, we can't leave our houses. Okay, what do we do now? And clearly you guys and girls over there were able to I mean, the draft was awesome, but the ratings were like just stupid how high they were, because it was the first live event that like meant something to sports for a while. So that was pretty cool. And it was just I remember watching it and everyone being like, this isn't really that bad. Like, it's kind of nice. I like spending time with my family, and like, we'll see if that happens again next year, because we know what the NFL is. But the coaches, and it was kind of cool seeing in their houses and their homes and their kids and their wives. It was nice. It was kind of cool. So hopefully we can get some more of that behind the scenes, and with going remote, and with seeing how, I'm sure there were hiccups. I'm sure it's not perfect, but how capable the entire industry is, because we've seen it, right? Like, it's not just sports that went remote. Like, I have friends that are news anchors. Shout out Alyssa. She's a news anchor in El Paso, Texas. Like, and she has just been doing her anchoring out of her house for the however long. And, her cat hops into the screen every once in a while, and it's cute.
Oh my
and people
gosh.
like it, and it's not really that big a deal, right? It's like kind of, we like that. It's a human aspect. It's not like you're just kind of just done up in a studio somewhere. So moving forward, how do you think this, being in the industry for over 20 years as you have, and knowing and understanding and kind of seeing it go from, hey, your studio or your your live, it's like, okay, well, now that's a hybrid. It's like, okay, well, we're, you're working for the Big Ten network, which is one of the first networks that decided, hey, we're going to do almost everything remote in terms of live games. Now you're starting to see it again in this aspect where studio shows are going remote, where outside of a couple people, we have sweet bookshelves, we have all that funny stuff, especially in the beginning. Everyone was trying to get all their stuff up. It's like, I like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. It's like, all right, man, you and everybody else on planet Earth. But like, how do you think this is going to change potentially your industry of, do you need 15 people in the studio? I'm sure it's a little easier, but clearly, as you said, you guys have kind of gone off without a hitch. Like, how do you think this will change this entire essentially television industry moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to working harder in this environment, you got to work smarter too, right? So, you know, one thing that I don't see really changing is having our analysts come back into the studio. I don't think it's going to happen this season. And then as far as next season, I mean, NFL Network is moving into our NFL West Coast headquarters, which are right across the street from SoFi Stadium, where the Rams and
Mhm.
Chargers are going to play. So we're ahead of schedule with that. So we're planning on moving in next summer and starting, next fall will be that will be our home base. So we're going to have a lot of new bells and whistles and new studios and bigger control rooms to actually have more people, but also keep in play, because I'm sure we'll have to, all the COVID safety precautions as well.
Mhm.
So I think we'll keep a little bit of the remote environment that we've been doing, but then also we're going to have a little bit more space, and just the chemistry of having talking to someone in person
Yeah.
versus on a remote box from their home or whatever. It's a little bit of a game changer, but at the end of the day too, I think viewers just over the past 5 months, 6 months, especially sports viewers, that they just want content. They want good
Mhm.
content. They want to learn something. They want the X's and O's. They want the storytelling. They want the conversation. They could care less if the person's in studio. And I
Mhm.
think we, as just growing up, like that's how it's been. I think we think of it as, oh my gosh, if someone's not in studio, it's going to be the worst show ever. No, it really is. Does it help a little bit? Probably. But at the end of the day, it's about information, content, what our viewers are learning, and that type of stuff. So I think keeping that concept you'll still see it. But yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, there's just these past 6 months, there's no right or wrong way of doing anything. We're kind of still learning as we go.
Yes,
There's a
and we
lot, there's
all
a lot more
are.
podcasts out there, right? A lot more
Yes.
podcasts.
There are, but the one thing that I found out, or at least that I've realized, is everybody that started a podcast during the beginning of the pandemic already fell off. So I have
Mhm.
less competition. I got nothing to worry about.
Oh,
I
there
got
you
nothing to
go.
worry
There
about
you
there.
go.
Not everyone's as consistent as me. Leah, actually, you are episode
Good.
200. So congratulations. Look at that. Great job.
Wow. Okay. Can I ask you a
And
question though? Because I've
well,
I've looked at some of.
you're only episode 200 because we had technical difficulties last time. I'll say
Yes.
that. But yes,
Well,
what is your
that
question?
that was planned because I wanted to be 200.
You
I
knew.
I
You
did.
just knew the
I
whole
had
time.
I had my AirPods. I just didn't tell you. I'm just kidding.
Love it.
Um, how many? And maybe we need to work on this a little bit. How many women have you had on?
A bunch. In the beginning, I couldn't get
Oh,
any on
good.
for some reason, but I want more on, of
Okay.
course, because it's always I mean,
Okay.
I don't care who you are. If you have a good story, I wanna talk to you.
Good.
You did bring up Linda
Good.
Cohn. We're both Mets fans, so if that's
Yes.
enough for an introduction, I'm totally cool with it. You let me know, but, no, I've had a
Yes.
bunch on. It's awesome getting their perspective, your perspective, of
Good.
course, in an industry that is very male dominated. It's
Yeah.
good to understand kind of what you've come up through and how you've done it because you clearly killed it right from the get-go. You got that ball
Wow.
girl job at the San Diego Padres, and you were just a rocket ship to the moon from that point moving forward. So,
Yes.
um,
Good. Good. There are a lot of women in sports that are behind the scenes that you don't normally see or hear, and they pretty much make the productions go. So just want to, I can put you in touch with some really badass
yes.
women that would be fantastic for your viewers.
100%. I would love that
Good.
opportunity. The more stories, the
Good.
better. Let's share them all. I wanna talk to everybody because as you networked a lot in the beginning, this is a
Yeah.
platform that I love to use to get to talk to people, meet them, and really get to learn their story. That's why I like these longer
Yes.
form. And I know we're a couple minutes over time here, but I have a couple
Yeah.
last questions for you if it's
Okay.
okay.
Sure.
All right, sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were talking a little bit about it in the beginning and kind of brought it up again. And you and I spoke a little bit about it last time as well as this the NFL network does get a few exclusive Thursday night games. And so you
Mm-hmm.
obviously are a very big part of the team there. How much does the studio get up for something like that? Cuz again, like there's only if you only get a couple. Obviously it's your network, it's your
Yeah.
sport. The rest are then simulcast with
Yeah.
Fox or NBC and it's kind of,
Hmm.
it gets murky where you can watch them and how you can watch them, but you get a couple. You get two. So we have this
No.
Thursday night. and then you get 2 more coming out these next couple weeks is when you
Yeah.
guys really get to shine. How much pride
Mhm.
really does NFL Network kinda take in knowing that, like, "Hey, the world will be watching us, or the United States will be watching us tonight because this is the only
Yes.
place you're gonna be able to get the game?"
It is a huge deal, and something that was, I don't want to say taken from us, but another thing with the pandemic was no preseason games. And usually August is our most watched month. I know
Mhm,
it seems weird because you would think, oh, September or
mhm,
October, especially for fantasy purposes and games and stuff. But we would have rights to games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they would be exclusively on our network, the
mhm,
preseason games. And that's, I mean, by week 3, we would really start, and it was a great platform for us to brand our total access show and our other shows. So that we took a really big hit just for overall awareness for all of our shows that I just mentioned and stuff. But just to have that live game on our air, because that's kind of the only other time besides TNS. So weeks 2 through 4 are exclusively on NFL Network. It'll be Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, and then 5 through the rest of the season. Weeks 5 through the rest of the season is the simulcast on Fox. So exclusively for 3 weeks, we do have the game on our air on Thursday. So our Thursday lineups, I mean, we start early. Good Morning Football, NFL Now. We have an early kickoff show. We have a fantasy show. Then we have kickoff to the game, and then games on our air, and then the post game show. So it is. It's a prideful day. It's also something that people get extra ramped up for. But it is pretty cool to have those exclusive games on our network. And then we'll get one like on Christmas Day.
mhm,
And then I think we'll get like 2 more exclusives after the first 3
mhm.
weeks.
Yeah, there's usually, like, a
But
Saturday
anyway,
one that's NFL
yeah,
Network, right?
Saturday
Yeah,
one that will,
usually
yep,
when those
yep,
Saturday ones are coming up, which
if,
are
if
awesome,
they
by the
toss
way.
our way. And
Yeah,
then,
those are great.
normally we would have one of the London games or international
Mhm.
games on our air, but those
Yeah.
aren't happening this year. So
Yeah,
that's,
those 10 o'clock. Yeah, those are great too. I love
yeah,
those too. Man, that must suck for
yeah,
you guys though out on the West Coast. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
Well,
it's
hey, you
brutal.
love your job, right? It's one day. Come
Yes,
on, not
this
that
is
big a
true.
deal.
It's one day.
Uh,
It's
but
one day. It's football season.
in into exactly. So you only get 17 weeks. Let's enjoy all of them, of course. Let's enjoy all of them.
Yes.
And then so with that, like what I know this specific this year it is going to be a little different, right? You were telling me now you get your Thursdays off a little bit because the schedule
Mhm.
with the pandemic and everything happening. So do you mind kind
Mhm.
of telling us exactly like what's changing in terms of Thursday night football this year for the NFL Network?
Yeah, not much as far as programming. I,
Yeah.
I would say in branding and stuff like that. So, I mean, you're still going to get all the programming leading up to kickoff. And then once Fox does take over, we'll simulcast their pregame
Mhm,
show and post for a little bit. But there always will be a total access
mhm,
post-game show. Um, the biggest difference is that our Thursday night crew is not traveling. They're going to be doing
mhm,
it from the studio. So it didn't make any sense because normally the TNF crew is on site. And so we have our studio crew to wrap up the night. So it just made sense for a lot of reasons to
yeah,
keep the TNF crew there to do the pre and the post show with their talent and stuff. So it'll still be called Total Access,
mhm,
but it's using the Thursday Night Football crew, which is
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it
So
makes life a
it's
heck of
still,
a
I
lot
mean,
easier. Yeah.
and I can sit on the couch and enjoy the game with a beer or a glass of wine, which I haven't been able to do ever. So
Well
there's
deserved,
perks.
very well deserved, Leo, look at that, and then my last question,
Thank
so we
you.
brought it up, and I'm always kinda curious, how the heck does a simulcast work? Like, do you have some producers from one network and some from another? Does one just completely take over and you guys just say, "Send us
Yeah.
the feed," and just kinda have someone look it
Yeah.
over? Because again,
We,
with something this big, it's always I'm always curious how exactly it
yeah,
works.
we take the feed. So example last night was, so NBC, obviously the game was on NBC. So we did our post game show up until an hour before kickoff. And then we
Mhm,
took NBC's pregame show to kickoff. We'll do that too with Fox as well. So simulcast pretty much just means we are taking the feed of Fox and putting it on our network with our own ticker. But we do have say in content. I mean, we work with Fox
mhm,
all the time
yeah,
in like promoting NFL Network. And, you know, it's better to obviously to have that simulcast because we do have a live event on our network with our branding. Although, you know, because it's Fox, majority of the people will watch, but still we do have that branding. So, and that's kind of what happened with draft too, because of COVID. So we took ESPN's feed, like essentially they produced everything. It was their people from Bristol, and we just branded it on our network. So that's kind of how that works.
And then the other one, there's another Thursday night one with Andrea Kramer and Hannah Storm, which is awesome.
Yes.
Amazon. That one is awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
So I know it
the
has
third
nothing to
string
do with
experience.
events, but yeah, that one is pretty
I mean, it's pretty awesome. If you haven't heard, like,
yes.
telling your viewers, just it's a second screen experience. But I mean, Andrea is probably one of the most knowledgeable people in sport. Whatever. I mean, she's a Hall of Famer. She's been there and done that. She will get you the stories of the high school coach, or you know, you're not going to get the traditional Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, because granted they didn't play the game, and that's not what their broadcast is about. It's more of the storytelling. And I mean, they're both just such fans of the game and passionate that it comes through. But I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a good example. A good example that you don't necessarily had to have played the sport or been around it your entire life. You just have to network and know the stories.
Completely agree. Yeah. It's ridiculous when people say that because like a lot of the play-by-play guys don't play the sport, so I never understand why it's applicable to one gender but not another. But that's another conversation. Yeah. But Lya, this has been absolutely incredible. Lya Vallat, senior coordinating producer at the NFL Network, formerly with ESPN, the Big Ten Network, worked with Ron Burgundy for some time. Lya, really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Michael. Congratulations on your recent nuptials too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Where can everybody find you on the internet? I forgot. I always have to remember asking that. Where can everybody find you in case they're curious, want to ask you some more questions?
So at ballgirl8 for Twitter, if you want to DM,
and
then just at Lya Vallat for Instagram.
Ballgirl8.
That's
excited for that one.
Thanks
so much, Lya.
I have TikTok. I have TikTok, but I don't know how to use it really. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't have one, and I'm
not
going to request your friends there. But thanks, Lya. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.